The subject of today's episode will be even more kidnappings, sexual assaults, and beatings of young black women around Philadelphia, including a friend of his we met earlier, police incompetence, store-brand dog food, murder, and a putrid smell that would literally take over the neighborhood. All ending with the downfall of the good bishop when he becomes a little too trusting with one of his prisoners on our second and final episode of Gary M. Heidnik. I'm Kevin Young.
And I am Dan Hourigan.
And this is Torture. Whew. Well, what's up? I made the mistake, because of when our last episode went out, of not saying to you and to all our fans out there, Happy St. Patrick's Day.
Oh yeah. St. Patty's Day, everybody.
Because it came out on St. Patrick's Day, and when I was going back and editing everything, I was like, motherfucker, I forgot about that.
Kiss me, Barney, and all that stuff. Well, happy St. Patty's Day to you too, Kevin.
We had a pretty decent day. I wore, I know it's not a thing over there to wear green or you get pinched. Is it?
No, it's not, no.
Yeah, see, that's
No.
Americans turn everything into a fucking game.
Yeah.
Hey, you know this holiday, this national holiday they have in this other country? Let's fuck with it. That's pretty much what we do.
Yeah,
So,
I'm pretty sure
yeah.
you saw my other Facebook post about it when I shared the memory.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah.
We all feel that way, but like we kind of all just take the piss out of everybody else getting so into it. I think the Americans celebrate it more than we do. Just kind of fun.
Yeah. Well, I imagine some. Chicago with the river, and everybody over here with the corned beef and cabbage, which I know again is not a thing. I don't know if you saw the old friend of mine. He lives in New York State, I think now to stage, but he's an American guy who I got to know many years, probably about 20 years ago, playing games online. And he was commenting stuff to do with eating bacon and cabbage or some shit, and I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about? And he said as well that apparently he dyed his beard orange. I'm just going to throw it out there for everybody. Orange is the wrong colour. Orange is the enemy's colour. That's the Protestant colour. The stereotype over here is a guy that would be a ginger, orange beard and orange hair, and would be half tanked, eating corned beef and cabbage, or eating a potato.
So it's to look like a ginger, that's what it is. Okay.
Yes.
Then you are forgiven.
Yes.
Orange is the wrong colour.
For the longest time, as you're a kid in America, you believe that every Irishman has orange hair. Until you grow up and realize, oh, they're just regular people.
Yeah. That's watching too much Darby O'Gill and the Little People.
Yeah, it's cartoons and bullshit.
The classic movie with Jennifer Aniston, Leprechaun. Can't you tell by the wee buckles on my shoes? I'm a leprechaun.
Exactly.
Fuck off.
That and Lucky Charms pretty much just ruined it for you guys over here.
Lucky Charms are shit. They're really bad.
I love Lucky Charms. Fucking love them.
I don't like that styrofoamy marshmallow crap. Like the actual cereal's okay, but that styrofoamy stuff is...
You can buy entire bags of just the marshmallows and snack on them.
I know, but it's weird.
Still got the cough.
You can buy entire bags of potatoes and snack on them too. That's what we do.
You can. Yeah. Those are my wife's two favorite things. Lucky Charms is her favorite cereal, and potatoes are her favorite food. So
she's really fucking drilling into the Irish thing.
I don't think she likes Lucky Charms so much because of the Irish thing. I think she just really likes Lucky Charms.
That's fair enough.
That and Cheerios. She loves plain Cheerios.
I love Cheerios. Yeah, Cheerios are good.
I'll do Honey Nut Cheerios, but I don't.
They're good too. But plain ones are delicious.
That's just like that's sawdust.
No,
but she likes to crumble up graham crackers in them, make it a little sweeter. It's like, just get fucking Honey Nut Cheerios. Why do extra steps? There's already something that's honey flavored that you can get. My wife, I don't know, she's weird. She doesn't like broth in her ramen or in her chicken noodle soup.
Then it's not ramen anymore, is it? It's just
she,
noodles.
So she has me boil the ramen noodles in the water with the packets already in the water. So you boil them in the flavor.
Okay.
Then you drain out all the water, all the broth.
Okay.
Just the noodles in the bowl with a couple pads of butter mixed in. And that's how she likes her ramen. So she was eating ramen one day and she was full or she wasn't feeling well and she put the bowl down and she's like, you can have the rest. I'm like, I'm not eating that shit. She's like, okay, whatever. I'm like, well, let me try it. And I took a bite and it is the weirdest fucking thing I've ever had in my mouth. It's so fucking weird. It's so weird because it's barely got that chickeny ramen flavor to it. Just barely. But then just like coat your mouth with butter. How are you eating this shit? She's weird. She's a weird person. Like we'll get the butter in
exactly.
Huh?
Why exactly does she put the butter in?
To keep the noodles from sticking and to keep them lubricated, I guess.
Well, here's better.
Otherwise,
crack an egg into it.
No. Her eggs. My wife is very particular when it comes to her food. So her eggs have to be when I make an egg, I like a nice runny yolk. If I'm going to hard boil an egg, I want it just to where everything in there is solidified and yellow. I don't want any green. I want it just right. Hers, you could boil them to infinity and beyond to where they are greener than the grass. And that is the way she would... That is the way she would want it because she doesn't like things being undercooked. She likes her steaks cooked all the way through. No red. Doesn't matter how thick the steak is. It's got to be brown all the way through. She's just... I don't know.
She won't be eating steak in my house.
I have to demolish any steak that I make for her. I was like, I'm going to make our steaks, and then I'll make yours, because I can't make all of them at once. Or if I do like a reverse sear, put everything in the oven, take ours out on time, and then I will sear ours in the cast iron while hers is still in the oven. And hers is always the thinnest one. She doesn't like thick steak. They got to be thin steaks. So then it'll be thin, so it'll be extra done. And then she covers it with A1. I was like, you realize that if you just let me cook it the way it's supposed to be cooked,
you wouldn't need all that A1.
You wouldn't need the A1. There would be juice to, it would still be moist. She's like, I like the flavor of A1. Okay, but you wouldn't have to use as much. You'd still have I don't know. You're killing me here, lady. It literally kills a little part of my soul every time I have to make her certain types of food, because it's like, this is not how it's supposed to be done. Fried eggs have to be completely cooked through. I break the yolk and I fry the whites and the yolk together. So it's this Kevin Pollak, not Kevin.
Kevin Jackson
Kevin
Pollak.
Pollak is the actor. Jackson. Kevin Pollak's the actor. It's this Jackson Pollak amalgamation.
Back to how do you like your eggs with Kevin Pollak?
Give me the old Kevin Pollak.
I have to admit though, actually, Alison is our egg master in the house. Like while I do all the cooking, she's very picky when it comes to food, only because she has one of these like hypersensitive palates. Sure. Like she could be like she should realistically been like a food tester or some shit like that. But the thing is, though, is that because it's so sensitive, if I put like a tiny bit of chili into something and she doesn't know it's there, she will know it's there. She will find it. Like, she will taste that. Like, you know, if I do something different at all when I make like a bolognese or something, then she fucking knows, right? But she, again, is also very picky about certain things. So like how her eggs are cooked, she is very picky about that. Now, again, she likes the runny yolk thing and all that stuff. It's literally just after, very shortly after it's been gone over that edge of definitely cooked. First time I made an egg for her, I had undercooked it for her, so she didn't trust me with them. So I said, "That's fine. You do the eggs from now on."
I know you tried. You get one strike and you're out.
No, that's But then she did one. And I was like, "Yeah, that's pretty fucking perfect." So I was like, "Yeah, you can do them from now on." So there you go.
I'm the I mean, I cook 90% of the meals in this house anymore, but I am definitely the breakfast person in the house. Those hash browns that I posted online a while back. That's what my hash browns normally look like coming out.
I need to make some hash browns.
They're damn near perfect. I pretty much knock it out of the park. Steph, see, you say Allison can tell all that stuff. Stephanie thinks that she has an ultra sensitive palate.
Ah, so she's a teenager.
When in actuality, she has no clue. She just likes to think she does. She hates mushrooms. Absolutely hates mushrooms. I fucking love mushrooms. And I wanted them in my spaghetti. So for probably the first year we were together, anytime I would make spaghetti, I'd get do regular spaghetti sauce, and then I'd chop mushrooms up so small that she couldn't tell that they were there. And I'd saute them up, put them in, and she ate it for like a year. She ate them, no problem. Then one day she walks in, sees me making them, and she's like, "What are you doing?" So I'm putting mushrooms in it. She goes, "I don't eat mushrooms." I was like, "You've been eating them for like a year?" And she flipped the fuck out. She didn't trust me to make spaghetti for probably 5 years after that.
Nice.
Like, we were well into our marriage before she started trusting me with spaghetti. She'd come in there when I would be making it, and she'd like search around to make sure there were no mushrooms getting cooked. It's like, we don't even have mushrooms in the fucking house. Well, I'm just checking. She's the same way with onions. If she has no idea there's onions in it, she does not care. But once she sees one in there, she's like, "I knew it. I knew they were in this." Like, "Oh, shut the fuck up." I love you to death.
I was going to say that the young lad is the exact same.
Yeah.
So, the exact same.
I did the thing. She's like, I could tell. I had to buy whole milk one time because they were out of 2%. One time, this was years and years ago, and she's like, "I don't drink that." Like, why not? Oh no, I bought skim milk instead. And she's like, "I don't drink that." It's like, why not? She's like, "Because it doesn't taste right." I was like, "You cannot tell the fucking difference between skim milk and 2%. She's like, "Yes, I can." So I got 2 cups out. I filled them both with skim milk, and I said, "Tell me which one's skim milk and which one's regular." And she took a drink of one, put it down, took a drink of the other. She goes, "That one's 2%. I was like, "Are you sure?" She goes, "Yeah." I go, "Really?" Because I put skim in both of them. She goes, "That's cheating." She started throwing a fucking fit.
Well, to be fair, like, I can understand if you tell somebody there's something different, then they're going to automatically assume there's something different. You know, so
yeah. But if you're really a connoisseur, if you're really that, if your palate is that good, you should be able to know you're tricking me, because I've been known to do that before, to trick you.
God's sooty.
Well, there we go. There's our banter for the episode.
Yeah, I could talk for hours about food.
Oh fuck! And you know what?
Torture a la mode.
At some point, we will have the Patreon episodes where we sit here and talk for an hour about food.
Oh yeah.
But until then, we got a message from one of our patrons before we get started. It's actually our very first patron, Willow Quinn Fowler. I started this episode thinking, yeah, another take. We all know everything about Gary Heidnik. But this was totally awesome. Never heard his backstory through all the true crime podcasts I've ever listened to. I was like, what? She has all the A's in there. So the whole time, y'all rock. Heart emoji, heart emoji, heart emoji. First off, thank you for the comment. I wish everybody would comment on our videos or our episodes. That way we know why we're getting 1-star reviews from certain people.
We asked you to be mean to us, Willow, and you were nice. How could you do this to me?
Be mean to me, Daddy. I love this comment because, Dan, like I told you, it kind of validates the amount of work that goes into these episodes. I know other true crime or history podcasts, not all, but some, just read off like Wikipedia or pull up a Britannica bio or go off what they hear on other podcasts or read straight from a newspaper website. But, we try hard not to do that. That's not to say I haven't gotten info off of Wikipedia, Murderpedia, Britannica, Medium, stuff like that. Because I have. But we try to go a little further than just, he kept people in a pit.
Dude, you did better than me. Like, when I had to do my bits, I think I got my info from the back of a cereal box or some shit.
That story you did this past Christmas, I loved it. I thought obviously the story was story's not great in its own.
Which one?
But the information, the one about the Cleveland, was it the Cleveland gang or the Cincinnati gang?
Oh, yeah. The insane clown posse.
Yeah, that's what it was. Yeah.
Well, yeah, I can't remember what they called themselves. Yeah, the something posse. Yeah. Hold on a second. There's cat screaming his head off. I'm going to shut down at him. I'm going to mute myself. See, what he's doing is he can't get at the other cat. And he also probably wants to get more food. So he's sitting there going, "Nah, nah," in the hall. So it's because he's between the two of us now. So we can get both of our attention. Dickhead. Anyway, sorry, my apologies.
No, it's fine.
But yeah, thank you, Willow.
Yes, we do try to go a little bit further, and to see that you guys notice it and appreciate it, that means a lot. So, Willow, like Dan said, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Now, on to all the horrible stuff. When we last left Gary, he had just shoved Nicole, or Josefina Rivera, into the pit, covered her up, and left her for the next 27 hours. The next time Gary came down the stairs, Nicole could hear that he wasn't alone. Over the loud music and through the boards, she could hear him telling someone to shut up and that he wasn't going to hurt them. She could also hear him repeat the same procedure with the shackles and chain that he had done on her. Then Gary removed the boards, pulled Nicole out of the pit, and introduced her to her new arrival. Quote, "Nicole, this is Sandy. Sandy, this is Nicole." Sandra Lindsay, the so-called friend from the Elwyn Institute, dark-skinned 25-year-old black woman, pleasant-looking enough, with thick, saucer-like glasses and a jaw that hang down just a little further than it should. Her bottom teeth and top teeth not able to touch. If you remember, I brought up Sandra Lindsay a little bit on the last episode. She would come over, have sex with him, maybe have sex with Tony Brown, and they were friends. She saw them as friends, and now she's a prisoner.
Yeah. You wanted to take the friendship to the next level.
So we have friends with benefits, prisoner, wife.
Yeah.
and then more of a prisoner with Gary after his wife.
It's going to say, then ironically, the prisoner status switches to you. I love being married, really.
Oh, yes, it's honestly, it's great. But, we kid. So it was one of those, take my wife, please, type of things. Sandra was mentally challenged and didn't really understand what was happening and was sobbing almost uncontrollably. She told Nicole that she had been friends with Gary for a long time and that sometimes they had sex. She had even been pregnant with his child at one point, but was so scared of having a baby, she got an abortion. Now, Gary was not pleased. Quote, "That made Gary really mad. He criticized me at church on Sunday and said abortions were evil. Then he offered me $1,000 to have his baby, but I don't want to do it. Now he says I'm going to have his baby whether I want to or not." Which is just...
Gary's laying down the law.
Yeah, it's going to get worse. Gary had picked Sandra up from the Institute earlier that day and took her to McDonald's like normal. You got to get that Big Mac carbonara.
I was just thinking the same thing. Chicken nugget cacciatore, baby.
It's weird how much McDonald's plays a part in so many crimes through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. It really is. It's
nearly like there was like thousands of convenient locations dotted around the place.
It's almost like everywhere you went, there was a McDonald's. I guess today would be maybe Starbucks or Walmart's. I'm still McDonald's. There's still McDonald's.
Bed Bath & Beyond.
Actually, technically, there's more Subways than there is anything. Subway.
Yeah, I saw that actually. Yeah, that's the most amount. Yeah.
So maybe, literally opening across the street.
So that's because they're genius on the sense that they can be so small. Because 99% of them are mainly to go. So
the corporation that owns them is greedy as shit, and it doesn't care if one person buys into the franchise and puts their store on this corner. They do not give a shit if another person buys a franchise and puts it on the corner across the street from it, because they make money either way. So they don't give a fuck if you're encroaching on somebody else's territory.
I don't want to go on about food again, but at the same time, I have to say this though. So one thing I love and hate about it at the same time is the smell. Because when I was in New York, because they're fucking everywhere. They are everywhere. Ironically enough, I think there's more entrances into Subway than there are entrances into the Subway. If you get me,
Yeah, there definitely are. There definitely are.
Everywhere you're walking, like it probably masks some of the bad smells that probably happen around the city, but every 5 feet, like Subway.
Yeah,
Subway.
Yeah, we have one downtown here, and once you get about a block away, it's like, smell that fresh baked almost bread.
Well, it's not even bread, yeah. It's a cake. Anyway, sorry. I apologize for digressing onto food again.
Yeah. Then he took her back to the house for sex. After they were done, just like with Nicole, he came up behind her, strangled her until she gave in, handcuffed her arms behind her back, and took her to the basement. Now, this was probably not the best idea. Sandra's family knew who he was. It wasn't the best idea on top of it already being a bad idea. It's not like otherwise it'd have been fine. No, this was a bad idea all around, but this was particularly a bad idea.
We condone this as long as they don't know.
Sandra's family knew who he was. They also knew Tony Brown and the relationship the two men had. So it would only be a matter of time before the family started asking if they knew where she had gone. So Gary grabs them some crackers or bread, depending on what you read. Again, between the two books and some of the articles I read, it's the details that get kind of changed, the minute details that don't really matter too much, but still. So crackers or bread or something like that, and some water. And he got
Wonder bread and saltines are two very different things. Here, Kevin, one of them is sugar, one of them is salt.
But they're still, The
Wonder bread's shit, by the way.
Yeah. I love Wonder Bread.
No,
and saltines are fine if they're like in soup or if you're eating them with something. And after removing a few bags worth of dirt, he went over to the two women, orally and vaginally raped Sandy, then Nicole. Now this will be a daily routine for them, by the way. Little food while he works on the pit, then rapes both of them, then back upstairs. And he wasn't sexually assaulting them for like fun or anything. He wanted them pregnant as soon as possible, and anytime they cried or screamed out or fought him in any way, they'd get beaten with the shovel handle or they'd go into the pit. But it wasn't like this passionate thing for him where he's trying to enjoy himself and he just wanted to get off to get them pregnant. That's it. Josefina Rivera says several times that it was emotionless, passionless sex. He just get on, thrust a few times, and be done.
Sounds like marriage.
Yeah, something like that.
Well, you need to go the old turkey baster route.
Because
I know that's so bad, but like it's.
I think it's more of a power thing for him to do it.
Yeah.
To take what he wants instead of, okay, I just want to get you pregnant. I don't want to, I don't want to rape you. I just want you to be pregnant. So I'm going to do this, which is, it's still bad. But I think the actual...
It's a rape as well, but like,
it's the actual sexual assault itself is more of an authoritarian thing.
It's because
he brought down Yes, he is. He brought down a portable toilet. Nicole only had a bucket before this and a shirt for each of them to wear. According to Seller of Horror, they both had on shirts the whole time. According to Cellar Girl, she says that they were both completely naked until this point. Either way, obviously being fully naked is worse, but either way, it's got to be not just humiliating and terrifying, but excruciatingly painful, because this is Philadelphia just after Thanksgiving in an uninsulated and unheated basement. We're talking that basement's probably 40, 30 degrees Fahrenheit. So pushing freezing.
Yeah.
To be completely naked, nothing on your feet. The only thing for warmth is that mattress. And actually, it's probably a little bit warmer in the pit. It can't have been comfortable. Now, he also brought down a battery-powered black and white TV that would give them a couple hours of entertainment a day when he changed the batteries, even if they really couldn't hear it over the radio. A couple of days later, while in the pit together trying to watch Wheel of Fortune, they both started having trouble breathing. Now, they tried to scream for Gary to help them, but with the radio turned all the way up and the lack of oxygen, it was no use. So they slid their forearms underneath the boards just enough to let in a little air. They stayed that way for about 30 minutes before Gary came down. When they heard him coming down, they ripped their arms back out underneath that. But in doing so, they scraped them bad, like leaving cuts that bled. And Gary told them that it was the TV that was burning up their oxygen and they should ration their time with it. And that they needed to be more careful because no one was going to be going to the hospital for infected cuts or oxygen deprivation. Be like, okay, you have a cut. Let's go to the hospital. I'll just tell them I keep you in a pit. It'll be fine. No. If you're a prisoner for somebody and you get hurt, you're gonna stay hurt.
I was gonna say, I forgot about those old school oxygen powered television sets that used to be around back in the 80s.
Yeah, I don't know if it's gonna burn any oxygen or not.
I don't see how it would. Like, even like a tube television wouldn't have burned oxygen. Sure.
Part of me says that's heat, bullshit. But another part of me goes, I mean, maybe? I'm not smart enough in the way of electronics to know if he's full of shit.
But there's no open flame for it to consume any air. Unless it's a cold fucking burning TV or some shit. There's nothing there for it to consume. Like, I know they put out hot air from them. But they can't consume air. They can't consume. It'll probably make the place a bit warmer after it's been on for a while. Same way, like, my legs get nice and toasty underneath my desk here and my PC's on for ages.
Well, would they put out any kind of carbon dioxide or carbon monoxide? Do they put out anything?
Oh, no, it's just warmth.
As they heat up.
But that's the thing. It's literally, like, if you imagine, like, let's say, like, again, like your PC sitting down on the ground there, the fan's running on it, and it's just dispersing the heat that's naturally generating from electrical products. So it's just heating the air around. So it's not as if it's consuming something. Like a car pushes out fumes. There's no fumes for it to push out except like the heat. Yeah. Otherwise, what's burning off? What's being burned down to create that then, if you get me?
Sure. Well, if we have any electrical engineers or anything that listen to the show and would like to message us and tell us, confirm that Dan is correct.
I'm probably wrong. I'm usually wrong.
And that Gary is full of shit. That'd be great. Otherwise, we'll just end up looking it up on our own at some point, I'm sure.
Can televisions breathe? Let's throw it in the water and find out if it drowns. That's how we'll know.
My TV alive.
That's why they don't work when you put them in water anymore. You've drowned it. Point proven.
Now, they weren't in the pit all the time, only if they were disobedient or if he had to leave the house. Otherwise, they sat on the mattress and just talked. I mean, what else are you going to fucking do? Later, he will give them like cards to play with and little games and shit that they can do to pass the time. But for the most part, they kind of just sat there and twiddled their fucking thumbs. A few days later, Teresa Lomax, Sandy's sister, was pounding on Gary's front door. Ooh. Gary didn't answer it, but after they left, Gary decided to cover his tracks. He grabbed a piece of paper and a pen and went back down, told Sandy to write what he told her, quote, "Dear Mom, I am fine. I am in New York, and I'll get in touch with you soon. Don't worry. Love, Sandra." Then he made her handle the letter as much as possible to get it covered in her fingerprints. It's like, it looks like, well, we fingerprinted it. It's definitely her, but it looks like she was just playing with the fucking thing before she mailed it. I don't understand. Why?
Why did her fingerprints spell the word help? What kind of way was she holding this?
Fingerprints read, Gary M. Heidnik has me captured in his basement. Please help. That's a weird thing to have. I don't know what she was doing with it, but oh well. Next. Then he had her write her mom's name and address on the envelope. Then after a few slices of bread each and some water, they went back in the pit. Now from the basement, they could hear his footsteps on the floor above them, and anytime he got in his Cadillac, they could hear and feel the engine through the ground. So they knew when he was home and when he had gone out. They heard the Cadillac start up and pull away. Gary didn't come back home for over 24 hours. Over a day of these two cramped in this small pit. Gary had decided to drive to New York from Philly and mail the letter to Sandy's family. We don't have... Oh, yeah. Because that would...
Postmarks.
Driving from Philly to Malibu and mailing a letter back when they couldn't track you with GPS would have been smarter than driving just to New York.
No, but he said that he said in the letter that she was in New York. So it makes sense for him to do it because then it'd be postmarked from New York, though.
It does. It does. So we don't have any information on what he did when he was in New York, but it's only about a 2-hour drive.
Oh, yeah, and he's gone for 24 hours.
Yeah, he's gone for an entire day. But it's not outside the realm of possibility that a criminal somebody who kidnaps somebody would drive to, the 2 hours to mail a letter, versus if he's like, put down that you're in Malibu, and then drive to Malibu, mail the letter, and then drive back. Nobody's going to think you're going to go to those lengths. But 2 hours?
That's fair enough.
Come on. Again, nobody... you have to remember, the police in these stories are...
idiots.
It's
like, hey, we got this letter, and it says she's in Hoboken. But it's postmarked from Cincinnati, eh?
He really could have gone from Philly to Pittsburgh and mailed it, and they'd have been like, "Oh yeah, that's fine. I'm sure that's real." We don't know what he did. 24 hours in New York. Probably got some food. Maybe saw a show. Picked up a sex worker. It was New York in the 80s. It was a lot different than it is now. A guy like Gary could get in a lot of trouble in New York in the 80s. So now. But anyway, when they heard the car pull into the garage, obviously they were relieved. I mean, what if he gets in an accident or gets arrested while he's out and they're stuck in that pit forever? If he gets arrested, he's not going to go, "Oh, hey, you need to go to my house and check on these women I have in a pit." No, you're fucked. Just FYI, if you go by my house, there may be, I'm not saying there is, there could possibly be, if they snuck in, some women in a pit in my basement. Just saying, there's a possibility. There's always the possibility you might want to check. They could
will you go over to my house and feed my dog and my 2 women, please?
The dogs can run around the house. The women stay chained up.
Yeah.
They will destroy everything.
Like chewing on the couch.
Fucking hell. Ugh. Well, Gary goes down and pulls them out of the pit. And Nicole makes the mistake of telling him, quote, "Thank God you're back. We didn't know whether you were ever coming back. Then when we heard your car pull in the garage, we were so relieved. We were so happy because, we figured maybe you'd gotten in an accident or something." Gary didn't realize they could hear anything from the pit with the radio on, and he didn't like it. He didn't want them to know anything that was happening outside that basement as far as he was concerned. So he went up and grabbed some screwdrivers and came back down. First, he grabbed Sandy, pushed her to the ground, turned her head to the side, and warned her not to scream.
No way, don't tell me he's going to do that.
He took one of the screwdrivers and pushed it into her ear hard.
Righty-tighty, lefty-loosey.
Sandy screamed and screamed, but Gary kept on pushing and wriggling it around until blood started pouring from her ear. Then he turned her head and repeated the process on the other ear. And he did the same to Nicole, the whole time telling them that, quote, "Don't worry, you know that I'm a licensed nurse. I just want to deaden your eardrums a little so you can't hear me coming and going. I'm just going to puncture your eardrum. I'm a nurse. It's okay."
Trust me, I'm a doctor. So, no, Gary, I will not trust you. That is fucking terrible. Like, I just don't think it's one of those things I could definitely have like a mental image of. Like, it's just.
Yeah, it's not fun.
No.
Afterwards, he reminds them to keep their ears clean because, again, no one would be going to the hospital for an infection. What happened to their ear? It's an old screwdriver accident. I don't know. Now, I have to say, again, there is a difference between the two books. Cellar of Horror says that Nicole never has this happen to her, and it happens to the women later on in the story. Josefina Rivera says that this happens to her and Sandy now, and then to the other women he will get later. So, Josefina Rivera swears that it happened to her. Ken Englund says that it never happened to her. So, for this, I'm going to believe the victim more than the investigative journalist. If she says that, because if you believe her and it turns out she was lying, it's like, all right, well, you lied. I was believing you because you told me that happened, but you lied, so whatever. If you believe him and not her, then you are potentially saying that a trauma that she went through didn't happen. And that's gaslighting. Yeah. And gaslighting, folks, is wrong. So,
Kevin's word of wisdom for today.
That's my word of wisdom for the day. I'm sure Dan's will be much better later. Something about licking shoes or jumping over porcupines or something.
Gaslighting is wrong.
Then he started tacking up soundproofing material to the ceiling to deafen the sound, and at some point installed an eye hook into a ceiling beam, about 7 foot off the ground, so if one of them misbehaves, he could handcuff one of their wrists to it. They would have to stand for hours on end with one arm above their head. He told them this was necessary because of the constant danger of being discovered, which I don't see what the two things have in common. They're like, oh, there's somebody at the door. Quick, handcuff yourself to the eye hook and they'll go away. If you're going to be discovered, you're going to be discovered. Having somebody chained to an eye hook isn't going to change anything.
I don't think you really need to question the rationale of any of this. That's kind of like looking for realism in Star Wars.
Yeah. Well, you have to keep telling yourself, this guy was a genius? This guy was a genius. This guy had a genius IQ. Some of the stuff he's doing, he has a genius IQ. What the fuck? So.
Yeah, sometimes the smartest people are the biggest idiots. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've come to realize that.
Yep.
Now, Sandy's family was frantic, reporting her missing to the police just days after she went missing. Her case was assigned to Sergeant Julius Armstrong, who is just one of those cops we see in every true crime story. You know the ones I'm talking about. Guy, the one that let
super efficient at his job, always gets this shit
sorted
sorted out. He is going to solve this case by the time we finish this episode.
He is the fucking Canadian Mounties of Philadelphia. He's gonna get his man to get him a donut or something. He's just dumb thing after dumb thing. She flat out told Armstrong that she was sure Sandy had been kidnapped by a man named Gary and that he lived at 3520 North Marshall Street. She even gave him Gary's phone number. The only problem, she didn't know his last name. So Armstrong went to the house, no response. He called the phone, no response. Then he tracked down Tony Brown. Found him at, take a wild guess, a McDonald's.
My God.
West Philadelphia.
Sitting there eating lunch with his brother Charlie.
And their mom going, he asked Tony what Gary's last name was, and Tony told him. Except when Armstrong asked him to spell it, Tony, who was also mentally challenged, and honestly, Heidnik isn't the easiest name to spell, he spelled it Heidaike instead of Heidnik. Armstrong wrote it down, went back to the precinct, put it in the computer, and nothing.
No results.
No criminal record for a Gary Heidnik. Later that day, or soon after, Sandy's mother took the letter to Armstrong, and he figured that they were dealing with the runaway, not a kidnap victim. So he didn't really look into the Gary matter much after that. He didn't even make sure he was spelling his fucking name right.
All I'm getting is this image of our good old friend Mo Sislak getting the prank phone calls from Bart. Say, looking for a huge ass, anybody? Amanda hug and kiss.
I'm going to come across this phone and I'm going to strangle you. So you get a spelling of a name from a mentally challenged man at a McDonald's, and you don't even question it. You don't look up the address to see who the house is under. You don't call the phone company and say, "Hey, I need to know the last name of the man who owns this." You don't do any actual, and I know this is a weird thing for you to do since you're a cop, police work to figure out possibly where this missing woman would be. Could it be because you're bad at your job? Or could it be that Sandra Lindsay was a mentally challenged black woman and you didn't give a fuck?
It's like every murder investigation or any of these sort of things always end up being given to those two guys from
Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Yeah, like that's, yeah. It's like
I feel like they would do a better job. They would at least be like, "Oh, Peralta, could you take it?" And Jake would be off and running. They would at least give it to somebody else instead of doing the bare minimum to make it look like they were doing something.
That's true.
Because if he would have gotten the name right, if he would have looked up Gary Heidnik, he would have seen the gun violence, the kidnapping, the spousal abuse. Would he have done anything after that? I don't know. But at least then, you have a reason to possibly get a warrant to search the house.
I guarantee he'd go up and say, "Hey, are you Gary Heidnik?" And he'd be like, "Yeah, I am, yeah. So did you take this woman?" "No." "Oh, okay. You're clear. Thank you."
I mean, at least it's something. Fuck. I didn't even check to see how to spell his name right. I check how to pronounce names before I do a fucking podcast. You're a cop. At least find out how to spell it.
Well, you didn't check that woman's name who did the dragon's voice and fucking damsel, did you, asshole?
I did not. I let you.
I had to, and I had to embarrass myself, as you usually do. With really poor pronunciation.
If she had something to do with a crime, I would have done a better job. I'm sorry.
That's true.
Now, 3 days before Christmas, 1896. I do that all the time. I get the two.
We're going back to ye old yonder days.
Gary's much older than he likes to tell me. 3 days before Christmas, 1986, Gary was out cruising in his Cadillac. He had just accidentally picked up a cross-dresser and then booted him from the car. 19-year-old Lisa Thomas was walking down Lee Avenue, or Lech Avenue, however you want to pronounce it, on the north side of Philly, and on her way to a friend's house when Gary spotted her. They noticed one another, and Gary stopped and asked her, quote, "You want to see my Peter?" Which is just the best pickup line. I use it in bars.
To my wife later.
When I was,
you want to see my Peter?
Hey, woman! Did you learn anything new on the podcast today, Dan? You want to see my Peter? Then I'm going to get messages from Allison. He's not doing the podcast with you anymore.
You've corrupted his little mind.
Lisa told him she wasn't a prostitute, but they talked for a few minutes. Gary offered her a ride in the caddy to her friend's house. It was a nice car. She was 19. So she took him up on it. He took her to her friend's house. She ran inside, grabbed a pair of gloves she had left behind there, and bragged to her friend to look out the window and see what she was riding around in. This was, to all accounts, this was a very nice-looking Cadillac. He took pretty good care of it.
Hot pink, whale skin hubcaps, big brown baby sea electric headlights.
Gary was still idling by the curb. She told the friend that she'd be back and ran back out to the car, jumped in, and the two went to TGI Fridays for a meal. He asked her if she would like to go to Atlantic City with him, and he took her to Sears to get some new clothes. After that, they went back to his place. He gave her a wine cooler, and she sat on the couch. He put in a copy of Splash into the VCR for all of our younger listeners. A VCR is this.
I thought you were going to describe Splash.
A VCR is this rectangular device that we used to be able to watch movies and record shows on. You would put a VHS cassette in. A cassette is a similar looking boxy device that has film in it.
What's film? I hear you ask.
Film is what the movie goes on. I can't keep.
That's where the phrase "to watch a film" comes from.
Yes, exactly. Or, yeah, that's fine. And Splash was a 1980s movie with Tom Hanks and Daryl Hannah, where Tom falls in love with a woman who turns out to be a mermaid. Eugene Levy, John Candy.
Tom Hanks loves a fish.
Yes, pretty much.
Oh,
Tom Hanks is Kanye West. What the fuck's a fish? Now, the problem is at
good old analog media.
Oh, and you put it in coming to videos.
There's
blah, 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 coming soon.
You're saying there's no really more this whole buying your first album thing. When did you get your first Spotify subscription? Everybody knows when they bought what they bought as their first album. Like mine was a cassette of These Days by Bon Jovi.
What was the first album you bought? Oh, it was when I got that iPhone a few years ago, and it came with that U2. That U2 album. That's the first album I bought. Actually, my youngest son has gotten into CDs. He wants to start a CD collection, and we started getting him CDs a few years ago. So he has a bunch of CDs. I was like, I
never heard of somebody wanted records. Get records or
well, because
even cassettes.
CDs to them. CDs to them are as retro as records are to us.
Or as 8-track is to us. I think that's the actual time difference at this stage.
Yeah, okay.
It's probably 8 tracks.
Yeah. So if somebody had an 8-track collection, you'd be like, oh, that's pretty fucking cool. 8-track collection, man. I haven't seen those since I was a fucking little kid. Yeah. He wants to start a CD collection. It's like CDs are great if you don't touch them.
I still have a fucking ton of them. Even though I use Spotify, I have a box up in the attic that has all the cases from them. I have under the TV downstairs, there's a box with like a sleeve thing, which are getting harder to goddamn get because nobody needs them anymore. And we have that filled with DVDs and CDs, and I have one sitting 10 feet from me as well, sitting in there. That's one of the first ones I bought. I bought a Slipknot one back when they released the second album, and I've had that ever since, and it is literally like bulging. Well, there's that many CDs in it now. But I still buy a CD though. I still buy them if
I got the cloth folder with the little insert, so you could put the CD and the booklet in with it. Yeah, I still got that shit.
Do you remember when widescreen was a thing? Remember that when that was the big thing? When like a DVD would come out and it'd come out in widescreen.
Be widescreen.
It's
like, there's no black bars on this. Well, but that was back when it was widescreen and you had just the regular size TV, so you had the black bars on top and bottom. Yeah. So everybody's freaking out because of widescreen, because it's like, it's wider, but it's shorter, so it's actually harder to see because it's so
unless
small.
You got a big ass TV.
Some of those movies that were filmed on specifically for theaters. And even at the theater, they still had the bars on top and bottom. You would get maybe, 4 inches of actual movie on your goddamn TV because it was so wide. So it was like, look at the panorama. But I have no idea what's going on in the fucking movie.
Do you remember when they brought out TV VHS combos?
Oh, yeah. I had a couple of them. Yeah, my kids, we bought them for the kids. Yeah, because the kids loved
they were
VHS tape so much.
They were like
the
pinnacle of media.
Oh, you get the ones that were like, we had a SpongeBob one. It was yellow and had SpongeBob's face on top. They had Dora, and they had Cars, they had Barney, Thomas the Train, all that stuff. Now, the problem is, at the restaurant, Lisa had to take an allergy pill, which was just now kicking in. And mixed with the alcohol, she soon passed out. When she woke up, she was completely nude and being carried upstairs by Gary, and they had sex. Now, it doesn't get into detail of whether or not she was conscious or lucid during the sex, which, obviously veers it more towards rape than actual sex, because she was, knocked out from the allergy pill. Afterwards, before she could get dressed, Gary used his arm to choke her until she almost blacked out, handcuffed her arms behind her back, took her to the basement. She pulled Nicole and Sandy from the pit and introduced them all like it was Sunday fucking tea. Lindsay, Sandy, Nicole, Sandy, Lisa, or Lindsay, I said Lindsay, Lisa, Sandy, Nicole, Lisa. Now you all know each other. Sit down. He shackled Lisa, and then he had the others. Then. I don't know what I just read. He shackled Lisa like he had the others, then gave them peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. All the words kind of became one amalgamation for about a half a second, and I didn't know what I was looking at. Then to assert his dominance before they could eat, he told Lisa to, quote, kiss my behind, which she did. Then he raped her. Then they ate their sandwiches. It's a authority thing. It's obviously just it's a power. Now, on Christmas Day, he decided to give them all a little present. Oh, no, I skipped on. I'm sorry. The ritual continued. Food while he worked on the pit. Sexual assault. Back upstairs to go on with his day while the 3 women sat in a dim, cold basement. The same thing as before. It's just now he has a third woman.
Sounds like the last house I built in The Sims.
It's you kept people in a basement?
It's the most genius thing in the world to do. What you do is you build a basement and you make it so that they can't get out, and you give everybody their own little tiny room that has literally a fridge and a toilet in it, and then you give them an easel, and all they do all day is paint, and then you earn all that money. Done.
Nice. So I never really got big into Sims, but that sounds like a good idea. But
cruel
what if the Sims
genius.
are actually real? Because we could be a computer simulation, and they're a computer simulation, so we're just a computer simulation running a computer simulation, and maybe they have real feelings, and then you'd feel bad about it.
Hey, Kevin, look at me for a second. I don't care.
I'll look. Fuck them kids.
Yeah. First painting, then sandwich.
he's adding women to this ritual, and it just seems to me like that would be exhausting, having to sexually assault all three of them in a row. It seems like too much work.
Yeah, he's obviously drinking an awful lot of pineapple juice.
I don't know what he's doing, but it's like, why you're killing yourself, dude. Now on Christmas Day, he decides to give them all a little present.
He's like a raisin.
He brought down a menu for Chinese food, telling them they could each order one dish for dinner. And they were ecstatic. This was like the biggest thing to ever happen in their entire lives. They were through the fucking roof. To the moon! They were so happy that they were going to get real food. About an hour later, after all the women had eaten, he raped them. After Gary told Nicole that she looked a little bigger, neither her or Sandy had their periods since he brought them down there, and he was sure that they were pregnant. They're not having their periods probably because of the stress of the situation, and they're bigger because they just got done eating a big meal of Chinese food after being pretty much starved for the past few weeks. But, problem is, it's almost a double-edged sword. Because, or a catch-22, whatever you go. He's giving them this food, but it's Chinese food, so they're going to be hungry again in an hour anyway.
That's true. It's just sugar and shit. The thing is, maybe they're a bit bloated because of all the love that Gary was filling them with, because it was all emotional. The entirety, the connection he shared with them. Okay. Well, I know what route you thought I was going to go down there, but
I thought you were going to say something else. Don't.
Like you said, they're filled with all that love.
New Year's Day, 1987. Gary came home with 23-year-old Deborah Dudley. Oh, Deborah. Oof. How he obtained Deborah is still a mystery. But what we do know is that Deborah was a constant thorn in Gary's ass. From the time he took her downstairs, she was a never-ending source of aggravation. Deborah seems like the type of person out in the real world, away from any trauma, away from any horribleness, just a person on the street. If this had never happened to her, and she would have no PTSD or anything like that, just a regular person out on the street. Deborah seems like the type of person that I would absolutely fucking hate. Just loud, confrontational, go out of her way to make other people miserable, especially if she's not getting her way. Just awful. However,
sounds wonderful.
In this situation, she's still pretty awful because of how she treats the other women. But how she treats Gary is fucking awesome. Good. Because she does not give a fuck who he is. She doesn't care if he's bigger and stronger, if he's the bad guy, she doesn't give a shit.
She's upset she missed Chinese takeaway day.
That's a possibility. She does make things worse for herself and the other women, which isn't cool. But she also makes Gary's life kind of a living hell for a while, which is fun. So first off, when she was coming down the stairs, while all the others were like crying and trying to come to terms with what the fuck was just happening to them, she was screaming and shouting and cussing Gary out, screaming at him while he put the muffler clamps on her ankles. Quote, "What the fuck do you think you're doing, you little shit?" and then looking at the other women that were staring at her, and she says, "What you all looking at, bitches? You got something to say about all this? Let me out of here, you bastard!" Just fucking.
Nice.
He ordered her to get in the pit. She refused, so he beat her with the shovel handle until she was cowering down, and he just pushed her in. And Deborah just kept shouting. No matter how much the other women asked her to stop, she wouldn't. So this is where it kind of where her attitude up to Gary is great. But again, it does make it worse on the other women because she's in the pit, they're covered, he covers her up, and the other women are like, you have to stop. You have to stop screaming. One, you're going to get beat more. You're going to get us beat. And we can't sleep because you won't shut the fuck up. And she's like, I don't give a fuck. And she just keeps fucking screaming. It's like, just 5 minutes. Just stop, please, for 5 minutes. Just let us rest. Nobody's going to fucking hear you. Nobody can hear you but us. You're just hurting us.
Yeah, Karen.
No, it doesn't stop her. It doesn't stop her at all. She's horrible through the whole thing. And I'm not victim blaming. Again, you do what you think you need to do if you're in a situation like that. Fight back as much as possible. If this is you fighting back, you fucking go for it. I'm just saying that if I was in that situation, if I was one of the other women, I would want to strangle her to death. Honestly.
I wonder if that's what happened.
Well, we're going to find out. Now, by this time, Nicole was working on manipulating Gary, trying to be his right hand or the number one girl in the basement. Lisa would later tell authorities that she never once saw Nicole get beat by Gary, and she was almost always the one left in charge. He would even order her to beat the others, and while Josefina Rivera claims adamantly in Cellar Girl that she got no enjoyment out of it, and everything she did was to further give her a chance to escape and save the others, that's not how some of the other women saw it. If you would read any of the interviews or anything like that after they got out, some of the women said that they were 100% positive that by the time it all came to an end, she was in on it just as much as he was. That she was actually enjoying it.
Which was Josefina or?
Yeah, Josephine. Yeah, Nicole. Yeah.
Yeah, I was getting mixed
Josephina
up there because they're the same person. Yeah. I was getting kind of confused for a minute. I was sitting there, I thought it was Josefina. No, wait, that was Nicole.
Yeah, no, Josephina and Nicole are the same person. I just kind of, Nicole, when they're down in the basement, I call her Josephina when I'm talking about, like, outside of that, about the book.
There you go.
But yeah, they were sure that Nicole was just as in on it as Gary was. I want to give her the benefit of the doubt and say that I don't believe that she was, but I can't be in somebody's head and know exactly what was going on. All we can go off of is what happens, and what happens would point towards the opposite, that she was not in on it.
So they think it might have been like a Stockholm Syndrome type thing,
exactly,
or just a survival method to...
If you were to look up this case online, if you look up Stockholm Syndrome, this is sometimes one of the cases that kind of pops up as in like a footnote that this might have been a case of Stockholm Syndrome. But I don't think it was. I think she was playing the long game because I want to give her the benefit of the doubt because she's a victim.
Yeah.
Now, Deborah, one of the reasons they thought that Nicole was against them, because Deborah was constantly trying to convince the others that they could easily overpower Gary, even kill him and escape. And it was always Nicole that convinced them not to try. Gary, again, was smart. Smart enough to know never bring the keys to the padlock for the chains with him when he goes to the basement. And Nicole knew this. And knew that if they did kill him, they wouldn't get out. They would starve to death. And this was almost a daily occurrence. Now, instead of food, pit, rape, it was food, argue with Deborah, pit, listen to Deborah bitch and complain, rape, fight with Deborah, Deborah goes in the hole. And this went on for about 2.5 weeks. January 18th, Gary was cruising on the north side looking for another sex worker. Now, I try as hard as I can to never blame the victim. So I am not blaming Jacqueline Askins for what is about to happen to her.
Yes, he is.
How? No, I'm not. It's not her fault. It's not her fault. However, this is definitely a facepalm situation. If you would just not... Again, everything that happens is Gary's fault. It's his doing. Every single thing that happens in this story is all on Gary. These women are not culpable in any of it. It's not their fault. They have no idea what's going on. They
can't see. He's winking in the video, people. He's winking.
Nobody thinks that they're going to get in a car with a maniac that's going to kidnap them and do horrible things to them, possibly murder them. Nobody thinks that's actually going to happen.
Sign up to our Patreon to watch Kevin lie.
But this is just one of those moments where you go, girl.
Yeah.
God damn it. Again, not her fault. But it's kind
of like the whole typical thing when you're watching a horror movie and they go walking off on their own and you're kind of like, what you thinking? Why are you doing this?
They're in the house and you can either run outside or run upstairs, and they run upstairs.
Run upstairs, yeah.
It's like, I know that it's
I forgot how doors function.
Your brain's all scrambled, but why would you go upstairs? Or they keep falling over as they're running through the woods. It's like, the killer's not falling over. He's perfectly steady walking along. Maybe you should do that. Walk fast instead of run. You'll still get away from Jason. He doesn't run.
He does in the first movie that he's in. There's a scene with him running. I think it's the first one that he's in.
Is there?
Yeah, there's a scene where he's running through the woods chasing somebody. I was like, he runs. So, yeah.
Okay. So, Gary sees a prostitute in front of a hotel, and he stops to pick her up. She's about to get in the car when, out of nowhere, 18-year-old Jacqueline Askins comes racing over from the other side of the street shouting, quote, "Don't pick her! Don't pick her! She's got AIDS! Pick me!"
Oh, Jesus.
It could have been... Again, she didn't know, so you can't blame her. But it could have been somebody else, which would have been just as horrible, but... God.
We wouldn't have had that whole conversation just there.
Yes, I'm not going to go over it again. So Gary relents and lets Jacqueline into the car. He gets her into the house. Same routine as usual. Drags her to the cellar. Then, because she's fighting him a little, he whips her with a plastic rod several times on the ass. He goes to shackle her like the others, but she's so tiny that the muffler clamps slide right off her feet. So he has to handcuff her ankles together. He throws her in the pit and tells the other girls the story of how he got her.
It's the story of how I met your mother.
She shouts through the boards, "She didn't have AIDS, I lied," to which they all had a fairly good laugh. Well, Gary laughed, the others kind of smiled despite themselves. Like you... I'm sure he was like, "Oh, dumb bitch," and the other four women are just...
Deborah's sitting there giving out.
Yeah. Deborah's going, "You dumb..." Yeah. The next day was Nicole's birthday. They all got to order Chinese again, and he gave her a pair of red furry slippers, and they had cake. The red furry slippers are a item of contention between the women. They, again, saw her as being one of the favorites, being the favorite, and them colluding because the rest of them had nothing on their feet, and that basement floor was freezing cold. It was, dead of winter. And now she had slippers, so her feet weren't as cold. She wasn't getting beat. She wasn't really going to the pit at all. So, again, they're kind of turning against Nicole.
She's
which I guess
trying to survive.
In a high stress situation, I understand where they're coming from, but she's doing what she needs to do, which you can't fault her for. She's surviving. She's alive, and that's what matters. Now, February 7th, 1987, Sandy, for some reason, had tried to push aside the wood coverings of the pit. I believe from context it's brought up later that she was helping Deborah, who was again in the pit for God knows what reason. Now for this, Gary decided to handcuff her to the eye hook in the ceiling. The punishment dragged on when she refused to eat the bread he brought down for her. Gary thought at the time that she was pregnant and needed to eat more. She refused. She had spent the last couple of days vomiting and running a fever. Gary didn't care. He just wanted her to eat. So he began shoving large chunks of bread in her mouth and forcing her to swallow by covering her lips with his hand. Here's the problem. Like I had said before, Sandy's jaw didn't sit quite right. So the teeth on top didn't really ever touch the teeth on bottom, making it hard to chew. One piece of bread could take her over 10 minutes to eat because of how she would have to mush the bread rather than chew it. So shoving large amounts of it into her mouth all at once was a bad idea. Gary went back upstairs, and not long after...
He's not exactly full of good ideas, is he?
Just the one bad idea he's had in this whole thing was to give her that much bread. Yeah. Sandy slumped down. The other three started shouting at her to stand up. And I guess it was three because Debbie was probably in the pit. No, there's four of them. One.
Yeah, there's four of them. There's five.
Jacqueline, Debbie. No, there's five now. Yeah. Gary, the other three started shouting her to stand up. They knew that if he came back down and saw her like that, he would punish her more. They did everything they could to get her to stand on her own. It even says that a couple of them stood up and tried to lift her up and put her back on her feet. But to no luck. Gary finally came down, saw her like this, and was irate. He got the handcuff keys and unlocked them. Sandy fell hard to the floor, and depending on which book you read, possibly hit her head on the edge of the pit. He claimed she was faking and kicked her into the hole, then went upstairs. When he came back down a few minutes later, saw that she hadn't moved, he pulled her out, felt for a pulse, but there wasn't one. She was dead. He claimed she choked on a piece of bread. And it's possible. She could have choked on a piece of bread. She could have had a brain hemorrhage from when her head hit the edge of the hole. She could have died of whatever was making her vomit and run a temperature.
She could have been sick to death and listened to Deborah.
That's a possibility too. Thing is, we'll never know.
Yeah.
Gary said, quote, "Oh man, that's just a waste of a baby."
Jesus.
Just
classy guy, Gary.
Just
classy guy.
Biggest piece of shit. Now remember, this was supposed to be his friend. This was supposed to be somebody that he actually enjoyed. And he's treating her death like it's just whatever.
Yeah.
No, he hoisted her over his shoulder.
Get him in.
Yeah, kick it to the curb. He hoisted her over his shoulder and carried her upstairs. A little while later, the woman heard what sounded like a power saw. Gary had 2 dogs, a lab mix named Bear and a collie-type mutt named Flaky, and they kind of had a run of the house and would sometimes go downstairs and eat their food under the pool table. Well, several hours after they heard the power saw upstairs, Bear came down with a long white bone with chunks of red meat clinging to it.
Jesus Christ.
I can't remember which book it said. Said it, but one of them said that the women looked at the bone and were deciding whether or not they should go for the meat that was on it. I don't believe that they did, but that was something that came up. Yeah, so we'll never know how Sandra Lindsay actually died because they were never able to do an autopsy on her.
Yeah.
And he couldn't just take her body out and dump her because everybody knew that they knew one another, and he would be one of the first suspects they'd go to. So, had to get rid of it somehow.
So he put it in a box of concrete and threw it off a bridge. He rang up Paul. Paul, how do you get rid of a body? Well, this is what you do, man.
You go to the laundry room with the saw and you cut her up and you just make the biggest mess you possibly could fucking make. It really pisses off your girlfriend. And then you take her downstairs and you build like these cement cabinets for your entertainment center, but you put the woman in the cement. Yeah. Now, on the 10th of February, the police were called and Officer Julio Aponte showed up to the Heidnik residence. Neighbors were worried. Gary had been known to attempt suicide in the past, and no one had seen him for a few days. And now there was a terrible smell coming from the home, settling over the neighborhood like a fog. After trying several times to get him and answer the door, Gary finally poked his head out. When asked what the smell was, Gary claimed that he had just burnt his dinner, which is different. It's a much, like, what are you making? Because literally people were in their houses saying that they could not make their own dinner because everything in the house was permeated with this putrid smell. It was all over the neighborhood. The whole entire block was covered with it.
The smell was Deborah.
This was good enough for Julio because he was like, oh, okay, well, can't arrest a guy for being a bad cook.
Great cop.
And left.
Hey, you that guy whose name matches with the guy that I'm looking for, except the surname is spelled slightly differently, who supposedly knows this person has gone missing? Yeah?
But
Well,
Gary,
so there's a really bad smell coming out
name?
of here.
Just Gary, could you spell your last name for me real quick? That's all you need. So yeah, he told them that he just burnt his dinner, when in actuality, it was the torso of Sandra Lindsay cooking in the oven and her skull boiling away on the stove top.
Jesus Christ. What the?
Now, Deborah was, of course, pulling her shit, and Gary had had enough. After beating her didn't work, he decided to show her what could really happen if she kept it up. Gary unlocked her chains and took her upstairs. He showed her the skull and the torso and the arms and legs he had kept in the upstairs freezer. Told her that if she didn't quit her shit, that would be her. Now, Deborah, while not at all the model prisoner, was a little easier to deal with after that. She went downstairs and the other girls were like, she was just stone-faced and didn't say a word. And they had to drag it out of her. She's like, you don't want to know. You don't want to know. And they're like, what the fuck is wrong? And she finally told them and they're like, yeah, we didn't want to know. Obviously, no, you didn't want to know. When somebody tells you don't want to know, listen. Listen to people when they say things to you. Because
especially in a situation like that.
Yeah. What happened? You don't want to know. Fair enough.
Yep.
You do you. Now, at some point after this, Gary was downstairs with the women watching a little TV when an Alpo dog food commercial came on. Deborah had the brilliant idea of saying, quote, man, that Alpo looks good. Shit, that dog food looks too good for them dogs. Look, it's got peas and vegetables in it and everything. Man, I could definitely have me some of that. Jacqueline agreed. Gary said, quote, oh, really? You like to look at that dog food, huh?
God.
The next day, he came down with an open can of dog food and a plastic fork. He opened the hole and leaned in, giving the can to Deborah. He told her to eat it. After she ate some, seemingly enjoying it, which, I mean, it is meat and vegetables and gravy. I mean, I would, he made her pass it to Jacqueline, who then ate it. Their only complaint was that it didn't have peas in it. It wasn't Alpo brand, just the cheap supermarket knockoff. Of course, if they would have...
Sorry, what do they think this is? The Ritz? Like, come on. You're getting the cheap shit, ladies.
Well, they would have complained more if they would have known of the other contents of the can.
Oh, no, don't tell me, no.
Mixed in with the cuts of chicken and beef and gravy was a much more exotic meat. The meat of a one Sandra Lindsay. He kept bags of her flesh in the freezer upstairs and would periodically cook them up and place them in the dog food, either for Bear and Flaky or for the women downstairs. And they had no idea. It was his little inside joke with himself and the dogs that they were eating. Alpo is Soylent Green, and Soylent Green is people.
That is just ridiculous. God.
I told you it got worse.
Fucking wrong.
I told you it got worse. Like, I understand. Like, okay, you're keeping them as a baby farm. You're making this harem of women that you're keeping chained up so they don't run away. But then why do this? If you're wanting them to give birth to your children, why feed them people? Why? I understand that they're being pains in the asses sometimes, but still, why? There's no point in it.
Because he's an asshole. Like,
you know what? You're right.
Yeah.
I didn't think about that.
No logic.
Right. He's
just an asshole. It's like the fucking the Dahmer sandwich, like. Now, just for being a dick. That's all it is.
Gary started getting more and more paranoid, convinced that the women were plotting against him, and he wasn't wrong. Deborah was constantly trying to get the others to help her overpower him so they could get out. Nicole was constantly telling them how it was a bad idea. So a while before Sandy's death, he had started taking them upstairs to bathe, one a day. While up there, he would grill them about what they talked about when he wasn't around. After her death, he started rewarding them with information, exemptions from the pit, better food, more freedom, if only slightly. He also decided that the other three could probably hear him upstairs. As he did with Sandra and Nicole, he got out the screwdrivers. Lisa claimed, quote, he used 3 kinds of screwdrivers, small, medium, and large. He twisted them in her ears until pus came out. Now, they resented Nicole because it didn't happen to her, unaware possibly that it already had.
But yeah, because just the two of them had it done at first, wasn't it, before anybody else was there, so yeah.
Yeah, and if Sandra was still alive, they would have seen that he wasn't going to do it to Sandra either, so maybe it would have made more sense. But since Nicole was the only one who had done it before, they just saw her as somebody who wasn't getting punished. Now, when Gary took Nicole up for a bath, he flat out let her know that he could hear them downstairs plotting against him, making a plan to kill him and escape. Nicole was sure to tell them that she wasn't a part of it. She was trying as best as she could to stay on his good side, hopefully find an opportunity to get free. He reminded her that he never takes the keys down with him, and she said she knew that, and she told the others, but they didn't seem to care. She also told him, quote, look, you gotta expect them to try and think of ways to escape. Gary, that's just common sense. You got them locked up here away from their families. It's natural they're going to want to try and get out. You have to expect it. But that plan, that's just a dumb idea. And when they went back down, Gary told them what Nicole had said, turning the women against her even more. About a week later, March 18th, seemingly on a whim, Gary came downstairs with a hose and an extension cord.
He already had all his hose, though.
He fitted the hose to the tap on the basement sink and began filling the pit with cold water. Put the lotion on the skin, it gets the hose again. He threw Lisa, Deborah, and Jacqueline in. After the pit was
I'm going
filled...
to turn on the bubbles.
After, there's going to be some agitation in the water here in just a minute. So, now after the pit was filled a few inches deep, he turned off the water and placed the boards back over the hole. The cord looked like any old extension cord, except the female end had been cut off and the insulation on the wires stripped away. Your eyes got a little big there for a second.
Saw what was coming there.
Leaving bare wire poking out. He plugged in the cord to an outlet. Earlier, he had drilled some holes in the wood so the women could see what was going on and they could breathe easier. So when they peeked through and saw that what he was doing, they started pleading with him not to. He assured the women that the current wasn't that strong and it should just be a little jolt. He just needed to straighten them up a little. He touched the wires to the chain and they started screaming. He held there for a few seconds before removing the wires. The women were panting and crying. Then he gave the wires to Nicole and told her to do it. She didn't want to. She had no choice. She touched the wires straight to Deborah's chain. Deborah screamed, "He's killing me!" And then it stopped. Nicole asked if everyone was okay, but Lisa called up, quote, "She's dead. You've killed her. I don't feel no pulse." And when he lifted the boards up, they could see that Deborah was face down in the muddy water.
That's just rough. Shocking, so it is. Shocking stuff.
Jesus Christ. Low-hanging fruit. Again, just low-hanging fruit. He pulled the three out of the pit and laid Deborah's body on the floor, then proceeded to make dog food sandwiches for the other three, stating, quote, "Aren't you glad it wasn't one of you? That's the asshole that caused Sandy's death." After they ate, he handed Nicole a piece of paper and pen and told her to write the time at the top, 6:30 p.m., and then write, quote, "I, Nicole Rivera, and Gary Heidnik killed Debbie Johnson Dudley by applying electricity to her chain while sitting in a pool of water in a hole in a basement of 3520 Marshall Street. Then he made her sign it, and he signed it under hers, telling her that if she went to the cops, he would use it against her. Then he took Nicole upstairs, got her some clean clothes, and left Deborah's body on the floor of the basement overnight." Just the body of this woman laying next to you. Yeah. The next day, he wrapped her in plastic, folded her in half, and crammed her into the freezer downstairs.
She's not a cardboard box, like, how?
And to him, that's literally all she is. He could not care less, especially her. He was sick and tired of it. I think he went downstairs with the understanding that Deborah was going to die, honestly, because he could not stand her shit anymore. After Deborah's death, Nicole's situation improved greatly. He believed that the letter would keep her from going to the police, and she had recently been almost like a right hand to him. So she was to live upstairs and pretty much just be like a girlfriend. They went out to eat, went shopping, got her new clothes. He even had her drive his other car, a Rolls Royce, while he drove his caddy to the mechanic. He confided in her, telling her that if he ever got caught, he'll just act crazy. He'll go to the court and start saluting everyone. So yeah,
that's his favorite thing to do.
Yeah, I'll salute everyone, but I'll be really quiet about it. Just pull his regular shit. He also told her what was really in all that dog food. Now you might be thinking, well, why doesn't she just get in the Rolls Royce and take off? Because he flat out told her, if you tell anybody, if you leave, not only do I have the letter to the cops, I will kill the other girls. And she makes that very clear throughout the book. I didn't do anything that I thought was going to get them killed. I didn't just take off. I didn't run away because I knew he would kill the other ones if I did. So Again, the other women thought she was, a traitor. But from what she says, and you kind of have to believe her, she was doing what she could to save all of them.
Yeah, that's fair enough. You have to understand that, to be fair. She went off and gave the Heidnik Hotel 2-star review on Yelp. Gets all current residents killed.
2 stars. Exotic meat if you're into that type of thing.
Yeah.
Bed's a little lumpy. Cold.
Shit swimming pool.
Now, on the 21st, they drove over the Delaware River into New Jersey, got into a forested area known as the Pine Barrens. He stopped and told Nicole that this was the place he wanted to dump Deborah's body. He didn't have to cut up Deborah. He could just dump her because nobody knew that they knew one another. They would never connect the two. And just before midnight on the 22nd, he decided it was time. Took the body out of the freezer and stretched it out on a blanket. He made Nicole look at her. He wrapped her up and threw her in the trunk of an old Dodge Dart, which he claimed wasn't as conspicuous as his Cadillac. They drove back up to the Pine Barrens until they couldn't see any headlights anymore, stopped, and dumped the body. The next day, he told Nicole that they needed a replacement for Deborah, and he wanted her to help. She saw this as her best opportunity. She told him, quote, "Okay, I'll go with you to get a girl. And then after that, I want to see my family. I can't take you with me because, there's going to be a whole lot of questions since I've been gone for a long time, and they're going to be very upset. Give me a chance to talk to them and explain to them what is going on. That I've got an old man and we are away, smoothing things over. And then I'll come back, get you, and you can meet everyone." And he agreed to it.
So you say this guy's a genius.
Jesus Christ. I mean, come on, man. Get your shit. Listen, I'm not on his side by any stretch of the imagination, but Jesus fucking Christ, if you're going to do this shit, get your act together. God damn it. He was fully convinced that he had her on his side.
Yeah.
Fully convinced. And it shows. And you're an idiot for thinking that.
He's just an idiot anyway.
Just an idiot. Oh. Now on the 23rd, around 7 p.m., the two of them jumped in the caddy and headed out. After only a short time, they saw someone they both knew, a small, dark-skinned 24-year-old woman named Agnes Adams, but Nicole knew her as Vicky from their time stripping together at the Heart and Flowers Club. Agnes yelled over to them. He pulled over. She climbed in the back. She said hello to Nicole and then discussed prices with Gary, $30 to go back to his place for a quickie. They took off to North Marshall. When they got there, Gary gave Nicole the key to lock up while he took Agnes upstairs. After about 15 minutes, down they came, her naked with her hands behind her back. He took her downstairs, chained her up, told Nicole that they would do it again tomorrow. The key, the locking up, both books make, it's not really an important part, but both books make a point to mention that the door's locked from both the inside and the outside with a key.
Right.
And what he did was he put the key into the lock and then snapped it off halfway. That way, only that one key would be able to lock and unlock the doors because the other half of it was already in the lock. And that's in both books. She says that, and Ken Englund also says that. Agnes would even tell the police later on that she felt comforted in the fact that Nicole was there because she knew her and she figured this was just some kind of kinky game they were playing until she got down to the basement. And he actually makes Nicole, for the first time since she had gone upstairs, come back down to the basement with him. And when all the other women saw that she was dressed in nice clothes, pretty much solidified for them that she had switched sides, you know. Now, the next day, Nicole leaned in hard on Gary to let her go see her family. All day she begged him, telling him that if they did this, she would help him get yet another girl. He agreed, reminding her of the letter, and that if she ran, he would kill the others. They left late that night. The plan was for Nicole to see her kids, pick up a woman on the way, and meet back up with Gary at a gas station at 6th and Girard around midnight. As soon as Gary dropped her off, Nicole went straight to her boyfriend Vincent's apartment, only 4 blocks away. All of this happened within literally blocks of their homes, which is kind of a scarier thing. Yeah. If he'd have taken them, hundreds of miles away to a new state or something, then still fucking crazy, but to know that you're only a few blocks away from your home is just a head fuck. Now, Vincent was obviously shocked to see her. The night she had left, they had had a big fight, and he figured that she just skipped town. But after over 4 months, here she was. She rambled on about being kidnapped, and 2 girls were dead, and 3 more were captive in a hole in the ground, and that he would kill them all if she didn't come back with a girl by midnight. And Vincent didn't really believe her, especially when she started talking about eating people. So he did, which I could see where he'd be like,
she's been on the old LSD.
Yeah, she's back on the drugs. So he decided to just go down to this gas station and beat this guy's brains in. But about a block away, he changed his mind and used a payphone to call the police. He gave her the receiver, and she told the 911 operator the story. They didn't believe her either. But with a story like that, they have to do something. So a few minutes later, officers David Savage and John Cannon pulled up. They also didn't really believe her, but she showed them the scars on her ankles from the cuffs, and they decided they should probably check it out. They drove over to the gas station and arrested Gary M. Heidnik without incident. Gary was under the assumption that he was being taken in for missing child support payments. This couldn't have anything to do with the woman I kept in a pit that I just released into the world. I have 130 to 148 IQ. I mean, just...
Yeah, the guy's an idiot, to be fair.
And he says the entire time, when they have him in the precinct, when they're questioning him, when they're going over everything, even after they go to his house and, find the women there, he is still adamant that he is only there for missing child support payments. It's like, we found these women locked up in your house. One of them was in a pit. Like, yeah. So they'll tell you why I haven't been paying my child support payments.
I've been too busy with all these.
I have to feed all these women. You know how much dog food they go through? Yes, I subsidize it with other kinds of meat. Yeah.
I had to buy an extra sharp, expensive knife to cut Deborah up in order to actually cram her into the damn cans.
So around 4:30 on the 25th of March, 1987, police entered the house at 3520 North Marshall Street, where they found Lisa Thomas and Jacqueline Askins shackled to a pipe, sitting on a small mattress, and Agnes Adams underneath some boards in a pit in the ground. Lisa and Jacqueline were ecstatic to be free. Agnes was still pissed that Gary hadn't given her the $30.
Yeah, it was only like the next day.
Yeah, she hasn't been in there long enough, I guess, to really understand what was happening to her. So, whatever. The next day, they found the pieces of Sandra Lindsay's body in the upstairs freezer. Apparently, this sent some of the cops outside vomiting because they found her arms and her arms, a leg, and bags of meat in the freezer, her torso still in the oven.
I was going to say slowly rotating in its own juices like a rotisserie chicken.
And her skull in the stovetop. And this sent the police out the door to vomit. Which is reasonable.
Understandable, yeah.
I mean, that's a reasonable thing to happen. Then Josephina took the police to the Pine Barrens to retrieve Deborah's body. She actually remembered exactly where they put it. And once they got there, it took them about 10 minutes to find her.
Oh, sorry, yes, it was Deborah. It was Sandra that he chopped up. My apologies.
Yeah,
so
Sandra,
he bought his fancy new knife to chop Sandra up. That's what cost him the money. That's what it was.
They searched. They couldn't find the power saw he used. They found I believe it was a food processor that had some remnant of blood in it, but it didn't match Sandra Lindsay, so...
It was shoving the body parts into like a Nutri-Bullet thing. Hey,
want some coffee? Now, after a checkup at the hospital, it turned out that none of the women were pregnant with Gary's children. He didn't find this out until they all showed up at his trial with flat bellies, stating, quote, "All that for nothing." He's the biggest piece of shit. He's just the biggest piece of shit. Now, Gary had always taken his Army disability checks and invested the money very carefully in an account he set up with $1,500 in the name of the United Church of the Ministers of God to avoid taxes. At the time of his final arrest, he had over $550,000 in his bank and brokerage accounts, a point that would be used at his trial to disprove that he was insane. Testimony from his Merrill Lynch financial advisor was used to prove competence, calling him, quote, "an astute investor who knew exactly what he was doing." And during his trial, Gary repeatedly denied all allegations of mistreatment of his captives and claimed that Sandra Lindsay was killed by the other captives for being a lesbian. Before his sentencing, he reportedly claimed that he wanted to be executed because the execution of an innocent man would stop the death penalty in America. He's so righteous, the bishop is.
You're an idiot, Gary.
Of two...
If you can hear me, you're an idiot.
Oh, he can't hear you.
You hear me down there,
convicted. There you go. Convicted of 2 counts of murder in 1988, he was sentenced to death and incarcerated at the State Correctional Institute at Pittsburgh. Now, there is a ton more about the trial. I went on kind of a rant on the first episode. I believe it was on the extended cut of how infuriating it is that true crime books are half the crime and then the other half is just the trial. So I'm not really going to get into the trial because it doesn't really have anything to do with the crime.
We already know what he did.
But there is a ton more about the trial and all that shit. He puts everybody through just hell. There were protests against him. There were protests for him, thinking that he was doing the righteous thing because he was a bishop and he ran a church. So what he was doing must be good. He tried to get... People are stupid, just so you know, if you haven't figured it out yet. He tried to get the venue changed several times, saying there's no way he could get a fair trial in Philadelphia or anywhere in Pennsylvania. And he tried to commit suicide a few times, had his death penalty postponed. Even Tony Brown and Josephina were under investigation for a while. They were both, thankfully, completely cleared. One of the books does say that Tony Brown knew what was going on, Josephina states in Cellar Girl that her and none of the other girls ever saw Tony Brown come downstairs. He never came down and raped any of them. That as far as they knew, he knew nothing about it. So take that what you will. So after speaking with one of his children, Maxine Davidson White, the daughter he had with Ann Jeanette that was taken to foster care, and a final meal of black coffee and 2 slices of cheese pizza. This was back in the day where you could get anything you wanted for a final meal still. They didn't change that until like the mid-90s, I believe. So why a cup of black coffee and 2 slices of cheese pizza? You could have literally anything. Give this motherfucker some dog food. Get this mother some fucking off-brand Alpo. Get him some Purina or something. Oh. So after his final meal, he was wheeled into the lethal injection room at the State Correctional Institute at Rockview in Center County, Pennsylvania. And with no final words, the man the Philadelphia papers called the People Collector, Gary M. Heidnik, was executed by lethal injection July 6th, 1999. The last person to be executed by the state of Pennsylvania. So yes, any of our listeners in Pennsylvania should know that your tax dollars went to take care of this man for 11 years before he was put out of everybody's misery. Now let's take a second real quick and go back to 1988 and the publication of the book, The Silence of the Lambs, where author Thomas Harris has stated that he drew inspiration for James Gumb, a.k.a. Buffalo Bill, from killers Ed Gein, who made skin suits out of the bodies he dug up, Ted Bundy, who used a cast on his arm to con women into his vehicle before abducting them, and from what I read, quote, some guy from Philadelphia that kept women in a pit. Now, I don't know about you, but I get a small amount of satisfaction knowing that Gary isn't even memorable enough to be mentioned by name.
He spelled it wrong.
Is some guy named Hadaki?
Yeah. Gary Heidnik.
That is the story of Gary M. Heidnik.
Fuck you, Gary.
Fuck you, Gary. Fuck you, Paul. Fuck you, Gary.
Yeah.
Now, I also saw a few different places that gave Jerry Brudos credit because he dressed up in his victim's clothes. Gary Ridgway, the Green River Killer, still unidentified at the time of the novel's writing, who, like Gumb, dumped women's body in rivers and inserted foreign objects into their corpses. And Ed Kemper, who, like Gumb, killed his grandparents as a teenager just to see what it felt like. But the original quote of what I had read before, he gave credit to 3. Gein, Bundy, and fucking Gary. So,
yeah,
Dan,
Gary.
were you able to find any pop culture as far as Gary M. Heidnik?
Well, it turns out that he is one of the influences for James Gumb in Thomas Harris's 1988 novel, The Silence of the Lambs.
You fucking asshole.
And I quote, some guy who... apparently the band Skinned released a song based on it that has Jonathan Davis in it. I haven't listened to it. Not sure if I want to.
Yeah, me either. No, I'm good. I like Jonathan Davis. I'm a big Korn fan, but I don't need to listen to that.
No, I listened to enough of Gary Heidnik at this stage. But aside from that, no, I couldn't really see anything specific. Yeah, everything just throws you back to Silence of the Lambs. Yeah. Anytime we've gone looking for anything, it's always Silence of the Lambs, Silence of the Lambs. So,
yeah, pretty much. Okay. Anytime you look anything up, Gary, that's the first thing that comes up.
Yep.
Well,
dickhead.
Thank you to our patrons, Cult Leader Nevin, Shagavani, Willoquin Fowler, and MX Sinister 26. If you guys would like to join up on our Patreon and even see our faces and see this video, so you can see that I was not enjoying, I was not victim blaming, even though Dan makes me want to look like I was not rolling my eyes or anything like that, or crossing my fingers. Patreon.com/torturepod. You can sign up for our cult leader tier for free for 7 days. And we got 4 tiers there you can join up on. If you would like for us to read your emails, you can send them here to torturepod@gmail.com. You can DM us on Twitter, I guess. We don't really go on very much. Instagram @torturepod. We still have TikTok for now, and we are @torturepod. We'll see how long that lasts.
Yeah, damn Chinese.
Go to our YouTube page, youtube.com/torturepod. You can support us on our link tree, which is on our socials, or buymeacoffee.com, where you can buy us a pizza. Buymeacoffee.com/torturepod. Again, go to our Patreon, or you can buy some merch. redbubble.com/people/torturepod. Got the hats on right now. Dan's got the torture shirt on. I can see it from here.
Yeah, baby.
Hint for our next episode. We all know of some of the weird and sometimes gross foods that they eat in the Nordic countries. This one takes the cake.
Okay.
Dan, any words of wisdom?
I have a couple of little things here. I was also thinking there that if about Gary, though, if he was a professional wrestler, then his finishing move would have to be the Heidnik maneuver. Give me 1 second. I'll tell you now. So, here's a nice little tidbit for you that I saw there today.
Sure.
Do you know what the difference between sci-fi and fantasy is?
What's that?
The length of Carl Urban's hair. Seriously, people, look that shit up. I was amazed when I saw it, and I was like, oh my god, it's right. The only oddity in it being the Marvel things where he shaved his head bald.
He shaved bald.
Other than that,
he was in Judge Dredd, I believe, wasn't he? And he was shaved bald. He didn't have very long hair.
You don't think you get to see his head in that?
Well, then you could just assume that it's shaved bald.
Yeah.
He was in that one show with the robots. It was shaved on there. Man, yeah, that's pretty good.
Yeah. Serious one though. Yeah. So spend less time with dickheads and people who drag you down. You know.
Yeah. Surround
yourself with people who care about you, and who you care about. You know, take time for people. You know, reach out to that person you haven't talked to in quite a while. I only did that today. I suffer seriously from anxiety things and all this shit, and I've gone through stuff over the last couple of days. I've been reaching back out to people and been like, "Hey, how you doing?" Finding out, that they're kind of the same boat as me. So it's nice, touching base with. Keep those people close to you. Do that.
You never know what could happen.
That's it.
It's a good word of wisdom. I like that. I thought you were going to go, do you know what the difference between wallpaper and toilet paper is?
No.
Gross.
Ha! That's good.
Or I saw another one the other day. Do you know what the difference is between me and a big fat stupid guy?
No.
That's hurtful.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure if I said that to my wife, she'd just say, "You're not stupid." I'm like, "Oh, fuck you." Guarantee you that'd be the answer.
Or you know what the difference between me and a horse is? What? Lots of things.
Yeah.
All right.
Except for one.
Oh! This is a long fucking episode, so we're going to let everybody get the fuck out of here. All right. Take care of yourselves. Take care of one another. And we'll see you.
Go fuck yourself, Gary.